started with who needs an operational security plan. For the purposes of today's presentation, we are going to be considering cultivators at micro, nursery, and touched lightly on standard, but as the majority of the people who've communicated with me, they are in a micro level, so we will be focusing more on the requirements for micros. Processors at both micro and standard levels will also need an organizational security plan, as well as anyone applying for sale for medical purposes, whether that is with or without possession. So what is an OSP? An OSP shows how your organization has identified and mitigated risks to prevent and respond to potential incidents that could result in the diversion of cannabis to or from the black market. It outlines the security measures on top of the physical security, including personnel and your standard operating procedures. You must submit one with your application and notify Health Canada via the CTLS whenever changes are made once your license has been issued. Okay, so there are 7 areas that need to be addressed in your organizational security plan. From this point forward, I'm going to say OSP. First would be your business overview. Second, cannabis-related activities that you conduct at your site. 3 is people requiring security clearances. 4, your organizational chart. 5, description of roles and their responsibilities. 6, description of standard operating procedures, and 7, your attestations. So what's included in each of these steps? First up is your business summary, where you are going to tell Health Canada what kind of business you are, what is your story at a high level, are you craft, local employers, exotic cultivars, toll processing, brand developers, etc. This is a high-level business plan, basically. Next are, what are your cannabis-related activities? Do you intend on cultivating, including drying, trimming, or milling that flower, processing, as in extracting, packaging, labeling, turning that into edibles, topicals, the list goes on in that category, and sales. What type of products are you selling? Will it be bulk, wet, dried, or cured cannabis, packaged for medical or the recreational market, etc.? Next, your intended market. So who are you selling to? A few examples are other licensed cultivators, nurseries, processors, researchers, holders of sales for medical purposes licenses, or provincial or territorial authorized retailers. Similar to here in Ontario, we have the OCS, everyone's favorite thing to hate, but we must do business with them. Okay, so moving on to people requiring security clearances. So this can be looked at as several kind of subcategories. So first, you're going to outline the parent company personnel, including their name, position titles, their CTLS ID, security clearance numbers, and if they're linked to the application in CTLS. Next would be the applicant or license holder personnel. You're going to again outline their name and position titles, CTLS ID, security clearance number, and if they're linked to the application. Key site personnel, name, position, titles, CTLS ID, security clearance number, and are they linked to the application in CTLS? Now, very important for an organizational security plan would be who your head of security is. So again, on top of what we've already mentioned above with name, position, title, CTLS IDs, security IDs, and link to the application, you're also going to outline their proposed work schedule, including the hours of work, their personal email address, and telephone number. And if you choose to have an alternate, it's not required, but you can list an alternate head of security on your application, and you will be required to provide the same information. Okay, next we're moving into the organizational chart, which will look similar to what we have here on the right-hand side of your screen, although that will include names, not fancy little drawings of people. So your chart is going to need to include all the people requiring security clearance from, first off, your parent company. That is the people who directly control or in a position to directly control any partnership, corporations, or cooperative. You need to provide a list of all directors, officers, and other management titles. Next, we have your applicant or license holder, again, listing out directors, officers, and other key positions. And then our key site personnel. Who are these people? Our responsible person in charge and an alternative if the alternate has been identified. A head of security, and of course, an alternate if you've identified one. A master grower and an alternate if you're cultivating, or nursery, obviously not required with just a microprocessing license. And your QAP and alternatives, if applicable. Again, not required for cultivators and nursery license holders, but all processors will require a QAP on their application and employed throughout their operating time. Your chart will also need to include people at the site who have a significant influence or decision-making capabilities. This can include, but is not limited to, managers and supervisors. It also includes anyone who has influence and power over strategic business decisions, day-to-day operations, or the ability to move a significant amount of money or cannabis through your organization. Think about investors. If they were to, say, threaten to pull their investment if you don't do things the way they want, that is someone, and they, you'd feel bound to them. That is someone who would have a significant influence on your decision-making process. So those type of people are going to have to be identified and will also require security clearances and to be outlined within your organizational chart. Okay, now we have to list the roles and responsibilities of each. So every person on your organizational chart needs to be included, again, with their name, their position, and then a description of their roles and responsibilities within your organization. The following are examples of what may be included in a summary of the roles and responsibilities of a head of security. So that role is going to be responsible for ensuring that the physical security measures comply with Part 4 of the cannabis regulations. They are responsible for monitoring the security and access control system of the site. They are responsible for ensuring the organizational security plan is compliant and implemented at the site, including executing security awareness and training program for all new employees and existing employees, as well as guests and visitors. They are responsible for overseeing the upkeep of the organizational security plan, for overseeing the development, implementation, and upkeep of standard operating procedures related to security. They also oversee risk mitigation procedures and ensure that they are in place to detect and respond to scenarios that could compromise an employee's security clearance or the organization's security. They are also representing the company's security in all reports related to Health Canada. Now, as a side note, this does not constitute a complete list of the responsibilities of a head of security, but I wanted to give you an idea of what it is that Health Canada is looking for when they are looking at your application. So next, a description of your SOPs. So what is an SOP? An SOP is a standard operating procedure. It is a documented procedure that directs employees on how to do or complete a task. So basically, an SOP tells the employee what you're going to tell them. You're going to tell them how to do it, how to record that they've done it, and how to identify any deviations from that, and how to report and track anything. A few tips when creating your descriptions of SOPs is you will need to have a system in place to review procedures on a regular basis and revise as needed. The descriptions of your SOP need to capture the risk mitigation measures that are in place. This is specific to, obviously, the SOPs. And description should be 3 to 6 sentences. Now, Health Canada has identified 23 areas. They've divided those into 5 themes that must be addressed in your descriptions of the SOP portion of, yes, the SOP portion of the OSP. We love acronyms in cannabis. Okay, so these 5 themes are employee information, your security measures, your security awareness and training, how you're storing your information, and then information and operations management. So let's look first at employee information. So your employee information SOPs must show how that SOP will address the following areas. So information received that can compromise an employee's security clearance, any information that's received on a non-security cleared employee that could compromise the organization's overall security. A tip, so conducting the basic security checks on all employees prior to their first day will help reduce potential threats to your overall security plan and your operations. We have a lot of value of product and equipment sitting within these micros and standards. So let's ensure that you're not letting anybody in who's going to put all of your hard work to risk. Now, what security measures? So you must address the following in your SOPs related to security measures. People, who, when, and where do employees and contractors gain entry? How do visitors enter? How are we addressing security breaches to the site? Access to operations and storage areas for employees, contractors, visitors, and breaches to any of these restricted areas. We're also going to have a set of SOPs related to cannabis movement. So consider how do you ensure the safekeeping of your cannabis? How do you validate that your cannabis is from a legal source? A little bit more particular to processors in that question. How do you prevent unauthorized cannabis from entering or leaving your site? How do you detect loss or theft? And how do you conduct your destruction activities to account for all materials? Now we're going to look at physical security measures. So at the micro level, along with nursery license holders, you must ensure that the following security measures are compiled with respect to the site type set out in the license. So when speaking about site design, ask yourself, is the site designed in a manner that prevents unauthorized access? Physical barrier for the site. The site, is it surrounded by a physical barrier that prevents unauthorized access? Your 4 walls can be your physical barrier, but what are you doing to ensure that nobody's running a car through the side of a drywall wall? So again, what stepped up physical security have you implemented at your site to ensure that you're preventing unauthorized access? Then we have restricted access. So there are areas throughout your facility that are going to have a limited number of employees that are allowed to enter. How are you going to control that? So thinking about storage areas, they must be surrounded by a physical barrier that prevents, again, unauthorized access and controls access to each storage area. You want to ensure that it is restricted to individuals whose presence in the area is actually required by their job description. And note, while visual recording is not specifically stated as a requirement for micro operations, it is a best practice within an integrated security system along with your access control system. So you're going to want to have recording, 1, just for your peace of mind. 2, if you were to have a break-in, it's nice to have a nice high-def picture of the person who did it, so you can send that to the police now. You're also looking at access control systems. Are you using keypads? Are you using swipe cards? Are you using a phone system in which it's Bluetooth enabled and that allows access to certain doors? And what roles are given access to these controlled areas? Again, we're going to look again more at the people when it comes to the OSP. So your security awareness and training. In this regard, your SOPs have to address the following areas: security awareness and training for all new employees and contractors, ongoing security awareness and training for all new employees and contractors, as well as existing employees. Things change, they need to be updated. You need to have that recorded in their training log. And then as well, security briefings for visitors. So whenever anybody comes into the building, they do need to be informed of what they are allowed to do, what they're not allowed to do, who they have to remain with if they've been assigned a buddy, if they are going to be going into restricted areas. Say it's an electrician who's working on some lighting system in your grow area, you are going to have systems in place to ensure they don't touch your plants or leave with any. Next, we have your storage of information. So again, throughout the SOPs related to information storage, consider, do you have a contingency if recording keeping system fails or goes down? Can you ensure the protection of client information, including against loss, if applicable? And what kind of storage and retrieval of video monitoring footage, if applicable? So say you do have a break-in, how are you recording that so that you can easily access that information to be able to provide it to the people who are requesting it, be it Health Canada, be it your local police force or fire agency. You've got on-site security personnel who want to review anything that's been brought to the attention by an employee who thought maybe something a little shifty was happening. These are all considerations when considering what you need to do to maintain safe record keeping, and that it's not lost. Okay, so information and operations management. The description that you provide needs to show how the SOPs will address the following: cybersecurity measures, information technology disaster recovery, business continuity, and any other concerns that you deem applicable. Okay, so the final section, and again, going over your OSP is not overly difficult. As far as I'm concerned, the biggest challenge is ensuring that you have the proper list of your SOPs with the right descriptions and that you've identified the correct people in order to run your OSP throughout your operations smoothly and compliantly. So your attestation, once you've completed your operational security plan, must be signed by your RPIC, your responsible person in charge, as well as your HOS, which is your head of security. So they must attest that the SOP has been approved by each of them, or a single person who is holding both those roles if you have a smaller operation to start. And then also always remember that once you are licensed, it does not reduce the amount of communication that you have with Health Canada. They are going to continually be looking for compliance. So you need to update your OSP when any change is made. So if a person leaves, a new person is hired, you're building out your management team, anybody that requires a security clearance, that has to be updated, and you need to notify Health Canada through the CTLS. Let's see. And I've got a couple things here, what to include when you update Health Canada, but it is what it is. You'll also get a management guide once you are licensed that will help walk you through any of these changes as they come up. Nothing ever moves as smoothly as we like it to move. Are there any questions so far in regards to today's content? Please feel free to pop them into the chat. Otherwise, we're going to go backwards and take a quick look at some slightly more in-depth incidents within OSPs. Okay, so we don't have any questions at the moment. So I am just going to flip back a bit so we can go a little bit more in depth into a few of these categories. Okay, so let's look at these 5 themes again. Employee information. We as employers do hold a lot of personal information, everything from employment history to resumes, security clearances, um, records that we've requested on employees who may have a history that we have deemed safe to work within our environment or a non-concern. Um, Emergency contact information, addresses, license plates. There is a lot of information that we hold for our employees, and you want to hold them with as much respect as you would expect your employers to do so. So again, just think of how these things would affect you as an individual if you were the employee, and what processes you would want in place to ensure that everything that we hand over to our employers is going to be safe within their hands. Security measures. So again, we've talked a little bit about the people. And then when we talk about cannabis movement, it's one of the reasons why I quite enjoy having cameras available throughout the facility that are high def. And my recommendation, along with kind of the industry best practice standards, is just have your cameras everywhere except for the bathrooms. Easiest thing. Have them facing doors on the inside and outside of any restricted areas. Have them overhead on all of your grow rooms. Have them in any transitory hallways, your mother rooms, your clone rooms. Again, anything that enables you to track what is going on with your product within your facility from the moment it enters to the moment it leaves. And even if you're responsible for that shipping and delivery, you want to make sure you have that under control as well. And that you have the right processes in place to validate, make sure what you're doing is working, to ensure that you're not bringing in any black market materials, that you're not providing materials to the black market, that if there is loss, you have processes in place, and a simple recording to be able to track what happened is a great way to do that. And then how you're reporting everything. So destruction is also a big one. You want to make sure that that is always done under a camera by the correct authorized people, and that it is being destroyed appropriately, and that it is being disposed of appropriately as well. And there's also attestations for every destruction that you do that must be signed off on, that someone is personally responsible for saying, yes, I can say that I know what happened to it, I know where it went, and this is what it happened. Okay, so when we're looking at site design in terms of security, again, when we're looking at a lot of these buildings, think about things like windows. If you're going to have windows in your facility, are they big enough someone could climb through? Are they low enough that someone could just lift themselves up onto a windowsill and get through that? If you're a larger facility, your vents or the facility, are they secured on the access inside and outside of the building? What else can we think of? Can they be crawled through? Are they small enough? Is your vaults, again, any vents coming in and out of your vault area, are they restrictive enough that a person couldn't hop in and out? Do you have a hatch on your roof that someone could potentially go through? These are just things that we don't necessarily think of when you're opening a retail store. But when you are in a license compliant industry where every single drop of everything that you do must be recorded, these are concerns. And I mean, just speaking from a retail side, I've worked in a store where somebody went through a roof in the middle of the night because who installed their security system was likely involved. And they were able to get away with, in the middle of the night, almost $250,000 worth of inventory. And it was not noticed until the next day. So again, you could be looking at things like motion sensors that could be turned on when you are not in the facility, in any high-risk areas where you think unauthorized access may be gained. Physical barriers, again, you want to have some reinforced walls. We've heard some horror stories about people going through from a neighboring facility. If it's just drywall, they can just knock that out with a sledgehammer. So protect your investment, protect all your hard work. Looking at restricted access. Again, not everyone needs to be able to gain entry into every facility. If you have someone working in post-production, they obviously don't need to be in your mother and clone room. They don't need to be in your storage room. They do not need to be in your QAP room. How are you controlling that access for those employees in each level of their access? I quite like door codes. Swipe keys are great. And again, I'm not going to get back into the visual recording. We've already talked about that a few times already in the last 20 minutes, but cameras are great. People cannot deny what they are doing when you show them themselves on a camera. And again, when it comes to security awareness and training for all of your employees at whatever, whether they're an owner, a director, a part-time contract employee who's coming in to help with trimming during harvest season, they all have certain levels of security awareness and training that they are going to be required to complete. They must be kept in their employee training logs. And again, you don't have to train your post-production team on security related to the QAP room. Your QAP is going to need to be trained in security on all areas of the facility because they will be accessing all areas of the facility and validating a lot of your operations. And then again, visitors, check-in logs, giving them an overview, letting them know what would happen if you have something in place. So if they kind of wander off on you, then they are reported as a potential risk. There's lots of ways that you can handle that. And again, Health Canada expects you to tell them, or your consultant, CLE, to tell them how you are going to maintain compliance in these areas. And that's one of the large benefits to working with a consulting firm like CLE. Our team is fantastic. They have so much experience when it comes to these areas. And we see things in your facility that you don't, for the simple fact that you are there every day. You are, it's kind of like when you're at home. I think I've mentioned this in the GPP when it comes to not seeing the dust on your baseboards necessarily because it's behind the bedroom door that you never close or something along those lines. It's the same when it comes to coming up with SOPs. For you, it's second nature, so you don't think necessarily to write that plan out, whereas your consultant will call attention to areas that you may have missed or may have not even considered or should expand on. So then we have our storage of information. Again, a lot of this is going to come from your seed to sale software, but seed to sale software is great, but do you have a generator to ensure that your security cameras continue running, that your software is continually tracking if the power goes out? Again, do you have an intranet system as well as an internet system? So things that should not be shared outside of the organization can't get onto the internet. They're not on the same system as, say, your email systems. And then as well, how are you going to store and retain that information for the amount of time needed? At a minimum, it's going to be 1 year for almost everything that we do. Several things require 2 years, some things up to 25 years. Even if you shut your business operations, you need to have a plan in place to be able to hold and maintain those required documentation in case you were ever asked for them. And then again, these are just a few considerations that you're going to want to make sure that you have addressed throughout your OSP. Again, cybersecurity, how are you preventing hackers from gaining access to your sensitive materials, informational technology, disaster recovery, your main server blows up or dies, there is a hurricane and it knocks out your facility. How have you maintained those records to be able to pick up where you left off, ensuring that nothing is lost? Business continuity falls into that same kind of category. Is how do you ensure that there are no stoppages in the information collection, retrieval, and retention? Other concerns could be theft of equipment that maybe has passwords on it. Do your computers throughout your facility require individual passkeys to be able to enter in information into your seed to sale software, updating payroll, all of that. So these are, again, considerations that working with a consultant like CLE is going to give you a little bit of an edge unless you're a security professional or an IT professional on your own. And then again, that attestation. So just remember, attestations are you saying that, yes, I've done my job, yes, I understand my job, and yes, I will continue to do this job. And you are legally liable for what you attest to. So ensure that you are continually keeping up to date, making sure that you're updating your CTLS, your OSP, your training programs, that you're keeping everyone in the loop as any changes happen to prevent any potential concerns from Health Canada, from your directors, from just people that you do business with in general. Everybody wants to know that they are safe and protected. So again, if anybody has any concerns or questions, please feel free to enter those into the chat. We probably will be wrapping up in the next 3 to 4 minutes, unless anybody has questions and want to get me going on a rant about something. Okay, so we don't have any questions yet. Again, if you are going through the physical security measures guide or the OSP guide provided by Health Canada, you are going to see some terms that you might want some clarification on. One that I get a lot of questions about is rings of security or rings of protection. Depending on the size of your operation and the value of what you have in your operation, those rings of protection may be simply your 4 walls, secured access, and cameras. If you have an indoor-outdoor operation, those rings of protection may include your fence, motion detectors, again, recording equipment, and then your building's 4 walls and secured entry and exit. If you're processing, do you have high value solventless extracts in your facility that you think need additional protection? Again, you want to limit your access to those areas as well for anybody not trained to work with any of those materials. And what else did we look at? Security clearances for individuals. This is going to require you to actually go through your personal history and consider as well who you live with. If you're like me, who tends to move quite a bit, this is a bit of a pain to do. You are going to be required, and each person identified as requiring a personal security clearance within that application, be it a director, an officer, an RPIC, a head of security, a master grower, a QAP, an investor who has a controlling interest. Everyone is going to be required to provide the same information. And that does include spouses or people that you live with at your current address, people you have separated from in the last 5 years, 5 years of addresses, your employment history, educational history, unemployment history, citizenship status. If you're not a Canadian citizen, not the end of the world. You do want to have permanent residency, though, by this point, if you're going to get into this. And then you'll need the specifics around that process as well, be it a Canadian passport, your citizenship documents, your landing documents, your provincially issued ID, birth certificates. What else? You're going to require going to someplace like the commissioner's office to have your fingerprints taken. They can send those directly to the CTLS process for you, or you can request that they are sent to you so you can take a look at what they find before you upload it. That's a personal decision. I personally just sent mine directly there. I figured if I don't know about it, then it doesn't exist. And if not, I can address that during a review period. If you have someone who fails their security clearance throughout the application process, you will be given a chance to address that in your RMIs, your request for more information. And again, having a experienced consultant on hand to help you address any of those things that do pop up. It's pretty rare, but let's face it, not everyone's as honest as they come across as, and things happen. People are surprised during that review process quite often. So having a contingency plan in place, whether it's written into your application or not, will definitely help you address that and move through it quickly. RMIs are everyone's least favorite thing to see once you've submitted your application. You are going to get them. Ideally, you want your only RMI related to any of this to be, has anybody changed? Have any of your investors changed? Does your QAP change? No? Great. We love everything else. License issued. But when you do get an RMI, if there is a response required other than, nope, nothing's changed, those can take up to a month. And that's rent, that's payroll, that's just building expenses before you've even got plants in the ground. So consider how important those aspects are when creating your application, when working with a consultant or doing it on your own. And just have contingency plans in place. We all want the world to move perfectly smoothly and never have any hiccups, but let's face it, that's not life, and that's definitely not life in the cannabis industry. So I think we're going to wrap up here today. It's been pretty quiet in the chat area, so if anyone does have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me directly. There's a general info at Cannabis License Experts scrolling at the bottom of the screen today. And then as well, many of you have my personal. I'm on LinkedIn. While I'm not overly active in posting, I do check it quite regularly, and I'm always happy to connect and address any questions or concerns that anyone has. So I'd like to thank you all again for joining us today. If you've enjoyed these sessions so far, would love it if you could leave Cannabis License Experts a 5-star Google review, but it is in no way demand. If you do have any feedback for us, I'm also open to hearing that as well if you want to reach out to me directly or our team. And for quotes and consults, please feel free to email info@cannabislicenseexperts.com, or you can email me directly at msweeney@cannabislicenseexperts.com. And that's Sweeney spelled the right way, SWEENEY. So thank you all again for joining us today. I hope to see you next week in our session on the importance of business planning and taking a look at marketing rules and regulations. We have a surprise guest joining us next week to get into the nitty-gritty on the marketing side of things. So you'll have to join us to find out what they have to share with us. And again, thank you all very much, and feel free to reach out at any time with any questions or concerns. Have a lovely evening, and we look forward to seeing you next week.